Good afternoon and welcome to Good Journeys Tarot. So happy to have everyone here with us today as we talk about the Strength card. And I want to start out by just reading something from the Tao Te Ching, which I have been reading as part of another study I'm doing. And it really struck me as related to strength. And it's in verse 67. I'm only reading a bit of it. It says, I have three treasures which I hold fast and watch closely. The first is mercy, the second is frugality, the third is humility. From mercy comes courage. From frugality comes generosity. From humility comes leadership. Now, if you were bold but had no mercy, if you were broad but were not frugal, if one went ahead without humility, one would die. And the reason this struck me as I was studying strength this week is because it mentioned mercy comes from courage, courage being one of those things associated with this particular card, and the idea of mercy being an aspect of strength. Is something that has come up on a recurring basis. In fact, many writers have called this benevolent fortitude over the years. To help me talk about this card, particularly the reverse of it, is our special guest today, Amy from Strength Reverse.
I'm here.
Yay! Welcome,
Hello.
Amy. So glad that you took the hint and joined us today to talk about this card. And it's always lovely to see your smiling face.
Well, thank you for having me. I didn't take the hint immediately because I thought, well, maybe she's not talking to me and I don't want to make any assumptions, but I did get the second hint, maybe.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you're here. We're going to jump right in today because, as I was telling Amy earlier, I am trying to abandon my house this afternoon because they're selling the house next door and it's going to have a parade of people all day. So I'm going to jump right in and we're going to look at some of our favorite imagery. So glad to see Maria's already here and joining us. The first few images I have are really kind of traditional, the lady and the lion as we've come to see them. This is very much a Smith Waite inspired version from the Mystical Medleys, which is one of my favorite fun decks because it keeps all of the original imagery and essence of the cards. There's the Ellis deck. And you'll see that serpent tail, which you see in some cards. And there's a reason for that I'll talk about today. I love that depiction. How about you, Amy? Do you have any that kind of follow the Smith Way, that lady and the lion theme in your
I
favorites?
do. I have the mystical moments, which I think is a pretty card, and you can see that the girl has her little tail and lion ears, so she's almost a
Yeah,
more gentle version of, the lion.
absolutely.
And this is from the Tarot of the Weird, which I'm not sure how I feel about this one because to me it doesn't, she's not really interacting with the lion, but it does have this pretty lion background. And the Golden Girls,
Yeah.
Sophia, who can
Yeah.
handle any situation and has a story about it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have the Curious Travels here, which is the lion. It's a little bit of a different perspective. The lion is actually holding the woman, so versus, uh, which I guess is still tamed in a way, but it's actually protecting her, so to speak, I guess. And then I have the Thoth, which is, of course, a little bit of a different feeling to it. That idea of lust or zest for life, the nude woman there. Of course, this card being contraband in prisons and that type of thing. But it seems like a completely different perspective. But as you study the card, it really is a lot of the same ideas. It's just choosing a specific one of the ideas related to strength. And This one I actually pulled out because it reminded me of a book. And so this is the English Magic Tarot, which I haven't pulled out a lot because it's its own system, so to speak. But there is the Lady and the Lion, but she's actually riding the lion. It kind of is reminiscent of the Thoth in that respect a little bit. But there's something written on the tail, and I can't figure out what it says. And I read the guidebook trying to see
See,
if I could figure out what it said and what the significance of it was. I'm sure that it's in a language that I don't know, because it's not actually
if you
Latin
Google it,
alphabet.
it'll pop right up.
And so, yeah, it just popped out at me, and I really wanted to know what those words meant. But this reminds me of the Chronicles of Narnia of Aslan, who was
Yes.
like huge, and they actually rode him in parts of the books. Let's see.
Here's
Maria.
the Murder of Crows,
Okay, yeah.
which is more of a darker, the lion's a little bit more ferocious, but this deck in the guidebook, it was specifically created as a shadow deck, and so the lion is especially ferocious here.
And Maria says that, this is a deal breaker card for her. She doesn't like it when it looks like the lion is being abused or they're being hard on him, wrestling him. Because she's the cat lady.
And I think that does miss the whole point of the strength card, is to, be too rough with the lion, because the whole point is that you're using inner strength and not brute force.
All right. I actually have a group of cards that are other animals that have been associated with strength. Obvious in the Fyodor Pavlov, he chose this were-dog, which runs thematically through his deck, which is a kind of cute and fun. It's a pretty dog anyway. And in the Central Wicca, there is a horse, and horses actually have been associated with the strength card in various forms over time. It was even mentioned in, I believe, it's Rachel Pollack's book.
That's interesting, because she did mention the other cards where someone is with an animal, being what was the first one? Well, it was strength, and then the sun card where
Okay.
they're riding a horse.
All right. The thing about it is that for me, it's I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, the animals represent this idea of the bestiality of men, that part of us that we need to control. That's how we gain our inner strength. We bring that ego under control, and that ego is represented by the wild side of us, i.e., the
Right.
animal. Now, the Numinous Tarot uses a bear, which is something that I thought I had seen in other decks, but I didn't find any in mine. Do you have any that are various animals?
I do. I have the Dream Keepers, which is a snake. I have a couple that are snakes. The Handle Tarot is also a snake.
And the snake would be relevant because this card in the Hebrew alphabet is associated with Tet, which is the snake, or the serpent, which is why sometimes we see a more chimera type of animal where there's a lion's head, but there's a snake tail.
Okay. And this reminds me of the Star card, actually, where she's kneeling by the water.
Okay.
I have the Mystical Cat Strength, which I just love. And that is a cat who is sitting with the little birds. And in the guidebook, it talks about the cat being the master of, controlling themselves, and being very gentle, but also very ferocious when they need to be.
Absolutely. Maria just mentioned the Wheel of Year Tarot has a man fighting a bull. And interesting you would say that, because my next card is actually from the Minoan Tarot. And this is a fresco of the acrobats with the bulls. So they're actually like flipping over the bull's back. And so there's this idea of them cooperating. They're actually working together, energy going on there. So this acrobat about to be flipped over the back of the bull. And then there is the second half of this fresco, which appears in this deck as Temperance, where the acrobat is actually on the bull's back balancing. And so I love that imagery.
I have the Sacred Circle, which in this deck, strength is called the Warrior. And she has fought many battles, and so she doesn't really need to fight because she's just has a confidence that where she can overcome anything. But the animal here is the badger.
Right.
And the badger, it talks about, can be attacked by multiple dogs and can hold its own and come back from pretty much anything. That's a tough little animal.
Now, that is a deck that I don't actually own, but I have worked with it because my friend Laura Perry, who made this deck, actually owns it, and I've used it at her house, and it's very pretty. Just this huge borders.
I know it does have huge borders.
The Bonestone and Earthflesh chose to go with like 4 animals, but they're more like spirits than like actually present. So they're like the source of strength, so to speak, for the woman here. And there is actually a snake, a panther or jaguar, a bear, and an elephant. All very powerful animals in their own way.
That's a pretty card.
So these 3 are actually ones that, for different reasons, I really love. One is the Spacious Tarot, which actually doesn't have a lady or a lion or an animal of any kind, but uses a cactus. And this kind of reminds me of the card I created for my Photo of a Day deck, where, a plant, it was a dandelion growing out of the concrete, which I thought was just an excellent sign of strength, that kind of fortitude to keep going. And cactus really was a good idea here. They can survive in almost any weather, no matter how harsh, on very little, and still produce beautiful flowers. So I liked that.
And as someone who as a child fell into a cactus, I can tell you that they have a quiet strength. Okay. I spent hours having little stickers plucked out of my back.
And then I took out the Santa Morte. At first, I thought that the wrestler was wrestling with a lion, but it's actually more of a demon. It's not. It actually has bits and pieces that look like a serpent. It's almost like an Asian dragon to me, but I know it's not because it's actually Hispanic in origin. But I kind of like the
Lucha Libre,
the luchador as strength. He's not being particularly rough with the demon, but there is this idea of wrestling your demons or controlling your ego with this card, and so I did love this depiction.
So, what do you think, Rosemary, of the Light Seers? I think it's interesting because the woman is the lion here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that was one that I had pulled out to talk about how the lion became part of the woman and the idea of the lamb being there. It shows this idea that I talked about before of the mercy that goes into this card as chariot, the chariot being all about willpower and drive, and this being more about benevolent fortitude. In other words, exercising strength for the good, right? It's coming from within versus that strength from without versus the actual action of forcing someone to do something versus here in strength, helping them get to what is right, what works, what is strong. And you can see my own little tiger is here keeping us company for strength. And why, I don't know. She usually leaves us alone on Sundays.
Well, she likes
maybe she senses that Leo energy. I have one card left, so I'll save it till we're Oh, we see
Okay.
yours.
Well, this is the Edgar Allan Poe tarot, and
Okay.
this is a statue of a lion, and the woman is Annabel Lee, who kind of, you know, was a poem written by Poe, but in it, the narrator is extremely emotional and overwrought because he has lost Annabel Lee, and so she was the one who just gently tamed his emotions. And now that she's gone, he's lost it, as many Edgar Allan Poe protagonists tend to do.
Okay. Well,
Um,
hello to Anne. She just popped in to say hello before she
oh,
goes
hey,
back to work.
Ange.
So she'll get to watch us in playback. Hint, hint.
And one of my favorites is the Titanic tarot, where you
Okay.
see the mother having to be strong and probably wanting to freak out in the lifeboat, but she has
Mhm.
to keep it together for this little kid who is holding, I don't know if you can see it, holding a lion stuffed animal.
Doll. Uh-huh.
So that's
Uh-huh.
where they have the lion in the strength card.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And the last one I have is from the Mott Tarot. And this one is a little bit of a different take because it is based on an Egyptian myth of the twin lions. And the male lion usually takes the human form, and the female lion takes, or the female twin takes the lion form. And it's about, part of the female, this is like the Egyptian Atlas, and he holds up the heavens, and the female lion gives him the sun every morning, and he holds it up, and it's a whole involved myth that I have to do more research on, but I just love this picture.
Sure. Well, my last one actually has a reflection in it also. In the Mott there was a reflection of the female lion. This is the Lost Hollow Tarot. It actually had two cards. One looks very much like the Smith-Waite imagery. And then this one, which is actually labeled 11, which we'll talk about a little bit, but not a lot, actually shows the lion reflected in the water. That idea that it's inner strength, that inner confidence,
Right.
that ability to carry on. I just loved this version. So with this particular deck, I'm working with strength as 11 and justice as 8. Because of the images themselves, not because necessarily I agree with the numbering of the system.
It is
And
a
so,
scandal. Interested in your point of view.
yeah. So Tara Stash has made it in. Hi, Gerald.
Hey, Gerald.
Welcome. Glad to have you with us. So we've just been showing some of our favorite strength cards, and now we're going to jump into some of the symbols in the card. I did color it. The only reason I changed the color of the dress was because I didn't want to color in the sky. Um, and if I left it white, it just didn't stand out right. And so, other than that, I really didn't change anything. I think probably I have no issues with this particular card and design. There are some things that I picked up on that I never had when I looked at this card. The one being the mountain in the
Mhm.
background. A lot of books will talk about the symbology of the mountain, i.e., there are things that we've overcome to learn this inner strength and gain that inner wisdom. I want to read a little bit from the Rachel Pollack book about what she says regarding this lemniscate, which we've previously seen in The Magician, and how she connects this card with the Magician and the Empress. That idea of power now coming through beauty to produce that inner strength. Um, Real quick. Um, she actually goes into a lengthy discussion about the difference between strength being 8 and strength being 11, which oddly enough is a completely different discussion of the one that Benabel Wynn has in her book Holistic Tarot about strength versus 8 and 11.
I liked
And
Rachel's discussion about that though, because it, both ways do make sense when you read about them, but one just seems more right for me.
So one of the things that she talks about is in this whole discussion of 8 versus 11 is magic and gendered magic, basically male magic and female magic. And she says, um, esoteric theory considers sexual energy as a manifestation of the energy principles underlying the entire universe, male and female being similar to the positive and negative poles of electromagnetism. Through manipulation of this bipolar energy, magic, power results. And so there's this idea here that this is where the magician's energy, as represented by the lemniscate, meets that energy of the priest, the empress. Here we go. So that the magician's power of consciousness and direction has mingled with the empress's sexuality, giving it a sense of purpose, which leads then to the hermit. And so, and I thought that was interesting because one of the things in my studying of the TDM meanings is that this card is also often associated with puberty, that period of time where people need a lot of strength and confidence because it hits some people harder than others, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I thought it was that interesting connection that she made to sexual magic when she talked about it. There was one other little piece I wanted to read if I can find it. Nope. But what is interesting, since we're talking about 8 versus 11, is that despite her discussion and Beneville Wynn's discussion, neither of them actually discuss the tree of life, which is something that I have been looking at in my to understand. And I'm going to pop in here my version of the tree of life just so we can chat a second about that. Oh, first I have to go back and open that folder. It's a disappointing thing with StreamYard. Okay. No, window. This one. Okay, sure. On the tree of life in the Smith-Waite system, the 8 falls between Chesed and Gabora. Along this line, making strength that line, that space between where we have reached all of the possible knowledge that we can of the universe before we meet the divine on the other side of the abyss. And so, but for Thoth, that actually falls between Gibora and Tiferet. So between severity and harmony. And to me, it works either way because if you put 8 here, you have strength, that confidence, and that benevolent fortitude, which links the pillars of severity and mercy. So, kind of the strength to move from one to the other. But then, if it were between Gabora and Harmon and Tiferet, it would be between severity and balance, and so there's this idea of it strength leading to balance out of severity, and which works the same way with justice. Justice could just as easily be the balance between the two pillars. This is something that I talked about in the article that just came out this week. Um, we often talk about that pillar of severity, which is the feminine, and the pillar of mercy, which is the masculine. But then we don't talk much about that central pillar. And so the idea being is that either justice is between severity and harmony, or it's between severity and mercy. And to me, justice always seems more about being fair or retribution. So to me, it belongs between these two, like I have it, and like Waite would have it. Whereas strength seems like the natural concept that you would need to balance that severity against that mercy. And so strength is actually that which brings us balance, versus it actually being a balance itself. It's the energy or impact that brings us balance. I'm not sure if I'm speaking that clearly, but
I
those are
understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. It just seems like to me it sits better in that place.
yeah.
Now that you're explaining the Kabbalah to me.
Right.
I am
And
kind
it's
of
something.
a Robin Wood school of thought
Uh,
where she says, like the whole numerology, astrology thing, it does not speak to me because it's all about numbers, and so I glaze over.
uh,
But then she likes that the 8 kind of matches with the lemniscate, and that the 11 kind of matches with justice, that very balanced number. And so I'm happy with either way, because if I get a deck where strength is 11, I'm probably just going to switch it around anyway. Get on with my reading.
yeah, I never pay attention to the numbers of the majors.
No.
Really, I mean, truthfully, when I'm using a deck. Um, and our little Leo over here is knocking things down for us. Yeah, well, Waite himself said, for reasons which satisfy myself, this card has been interchanged with that of justice. And that's all he says. He doesn't go
Yeah.
into any detail. He's just like, it makes more sense to me. And when I read about why Crowley left it at 11, I'm like, okay, well, it's just like you're contriving something to make it work. At least to me, and that was my
Wasn't it
idea.
all
He talks about how
astrological?
this, if you switch them in his mind and his practice, then what you get is it actually creates the lemniscate in the order of the cards. And so that's why he left them the way they were. But wait, it looks like, at least in practice, what he's done is he's rearranged them so that the zodiac is in order in in
Okay.
the in the 22 major arcana.
Well,
So
I think Rachel Pollack also says when you lay out the majors in the 3 lines of cards, strength comes underneath the magician, and so they both start the row with that lemniscate on,
yes,
which seems neat and tidy to me, and I like that.
right, absolutely. So we were talking earlier about some of the imagery, and of course, my card is now on the floor over there where I can't reach it. But in the Smith Way, which I do have a variant of, okay, that lemniscate is there, which we've talked about. In the magician, we all always associate that with power or divine power, but people were really like divided upon what it means. In this particular card, there is that connection to the magician that some have suggested. Some people think of it as the symbol of life and some energy, and then others divine knowledge. And so it could be several different things. But what's interesting is Waite says that this garland, which wraps around the woman and the lion, is actually a second lemniscate. That it has the
Hmm.
same meaning. While some might associate those flowers with beauty, which is an idea that they link to the strength card a lot. Um, Wade himself says it's the same symbol. It's just a different depiction of that symbol. And of course, we have the lion or animal in the card, which we've talked about, representing our basic instincts, our animal instincts, as it were. But also, traditionally, because it's associated with Leo, people have continued to use that lion imagery versus, say, some of the ones we've seen where they swap that out. Leo, of course, being that sun sign, which um, is actually closest to the sun. When we're in Leo, we're closest to the sun, and so there's more light shed on things. And I think that's when we have to be the most courageous. I think is when there's the most light shed on our lives, right? Because there's all of us have something that we're not proud of. Am I right?
Something we have to eventually deal with
Right.
before it deals with us.
Absolutely. Um, so let's talk about some keywords that we may not have mentioned yet. Are there any that come to your mind that we have anything that we haven't mentioned yet?
Well, for me, a lot of the strength card is about control. And sometimes control is an illusion, and sometimes there are things um, you can't ever control that lion. You can only control your reaction and how you go into a situation. And one of the images that I love, I have this fascination with like old timey circuses for some reason. And I have this book, and Michael and I both have pictures that are from this book on our walls. And one of the pictures I love that he has hanging up is this picture of um, the girl sitting on the lion. And she has this pretty, dress with lots of flowers. And that lion tamer always knows that that lion cannot really ever be tamed and is not his friend. He just has to, it's all in his approach. And I get a lot of the things that I think of with the strength card is killing something with kindness or losing the battle to win the war and kind of keeping your wits about you. Um, and that's actually what, for me, the reversed aspect is more about. For me, the reversed aspect is a magnifier. I know some of the reverse keywords are like weakness and being over controlling, but that's not what my channel name is about. So
Right. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So the upright meanings, some of the ones that come up that, I mean, they all basically mean the same thing. That's that inner strength, which gives us confidence, resilience, perseverance, self discipline, resolve, determination. And then there are these ideas associated specifically with the woman in there of dignity, of beauty, um, grace under pressure, this idea of taming our inner beast, so to speak. Um, it's about managing our passions. And so that's why to me, I love the Thoth card just because it demonstrates passions, which I think is an important aspect of this card. It being a fire card, it being Leo, and it being associated with the sun. I think we can't overlook that, there is a lot of fiery energy here, a lot of passion present. Maybe thoughts took it too far. I don't know. I'm not one to say that, but I actually love that image. Both of them work for me really well. So yeah, let's talk about strength reverse because that is like something that when you first study this card and you look at it and you see, okay, well, the reverse of all of these things would be like self doubt, lack of discipline, being overbearing or brutal, weakness. Those kinds of ideas that come up in the cards that Maria says she doesn't like,
mhm.
of being totally mean to the animal, right? Or
Right.
cruel to them. So tell us a little bit more about your channel name and your idea for strength. Perhaps it's an alternate meaning, which a lot of the cards have. They'll say, okay, it could just be the opposite, or it could be more intensely this thing.
And in a certain reading, I might read the strength reversed as any of those things, the opposite, the need for, you know, getting a more gentler approach. But as far as my channel name, I've had entire, well, probably since high school, I dealt with pretty severe anxiety. And a lot of times, the way I control it now, or that it might manifest, is a need to control. Like before I go on a trip, for example, I have to look up the hotel. I have to look up the airport. I have to like know what's going to happen. And so one big ongoing lesson in my life is this need to let go and just trust that I can deal with anything that comes up. And so for me, strength reversed is just a magnifier. It's, yeah, you really, really need to let go, and you really need to um, trust that you're going to, everything's going to be okay. You can deal with things. And it's like a constant battle to remind myself of that. Trust me.
And that's really the message I feel like I've needed over the last several weeks, particularly after I came out of the tower. And it's interesting you talk about anxiety. So up until probably 4 years ago, I had horrible anxiety. People never knew when I would like snap at them, and because I just was having a anxiety day, right? I was upset, and for no reason. And for the last 3 weeks, my anxiety has been really high, which is interesting because I haven't had any in 4 years. And
Mm-hmm.
particularly as I went and working with the tower to me always screams anxiety, that lightning to me, a lot of times. And so it was interesting that strength came immediately after that, because I feel like that's something we all could use right now, is that inner discipline, to help us, manage that anxiety and that grief and that destruction that's happening, so to speak. Um, and it's really what I've needed this last few weeks, and I don't know that I'm there yet. If I've accepted that strength reverse, as it were, like you said. um, I did love what Benabel Wynn had to say, which kind of reiterates everything we've said about this card. It says triumph of love over hate, compassion is strength, beneficent fortitude. There is strength in virtue, virtue in strength, triumph of one's higher nature over material desires. The strength card is about domination over the seeker's fears. It is a reminder that the seeker cannot use brute force to exercise will over others. The seeker must use gentle, subtle interference or influence. And with that, I'd like us to look at some of the images that I worked on this week, because like we always do, we share the card I created. At the beginning of the week, I began throwing together images that I liked from various sources that looked like the Smith Waite card, because I really don't have a problem with the Smith Waite card, and I kind of like the symbols in it, the roses and the lemniscate and the woman and the lion. And I ended up with this. And of course, I wasn't going to find a silhouette of someone holding a lion's mouth shut. Um, and But I had this image of a woman that I used in another card, and to me an aspect of that card is strength. And so I wanted to use the same woman because I thought she would be what I call beautiful, right, and standing out. And that's kind of what the woman in the Smith Waite and the Thoth are, is standing out as confident, in different ways, one seeming much more gentle and one much more passionate. And I wanted to kind of capture both of those ideas, which is why I made her red. And I had her hold the rose because of the symbology of the roses in the original edition. But then later in the week, I was thinking to myself about, when have I thought to myself, I need strength, right? I need confidence and that type of thing. And so I began playing with an idea of walking down a city street. When I lived in Savannah, I worked with the inner city area there, and I lived just off of some of the uh, less safe areas of the city. And so I rarely would be out at night. And the same was true when I lived in Manila. The townhouse I lived in Manila was one block over from the most dangerous neighborhood in the city. And so I never went out after dark. And the one or two times I got called after dark, I remember just walking down the street thinking, okay, I just need to be confident and calm, and I need to, you know, walk home. And so that kind of I need for strength in those moments, kind of spoke to me. And so I played with this idea of the graffiti on the walls and walking down this dark street. Some people liked it online. I'm not sure which I prefer.
I like it. The first card, I think, more focuses on the beauty and gentleness aspect of strength. But on the second card, I think you get a sense that if she has to fight, she will. But, she's confident enough to do that. But she's going to move through a difficult situation with grace and with confidence. So I kind of like the second card.
And you'll see I added the dandelions growing out of the concrete, that nod to that original photo of the day card I created.
Yeah.
And the idea of dandelions actually, being associated with lions, I guess, to speak, in the terminology, right? But yeah, them bursting through the concrete, that's always spoke to me. So I wonder if they're different in reverse. So what do you think? Your strength reversed?
Well, the first one looks interesting reversed. This one does. I like how the lion is still staring right at you when it's reversed.
Yeah, right.
But I do kind of like the second one.
Yeah. It's interesting how they look differently when they're reversed. I mean, we usually don't pay some people will read that into their cards, like what it looks like when it's reversed, and how things line up. I do like this one artistically when it's reversed more so.
Yeah,
than
I
this
do.
one, but I do think that this is probably the card that I'll use because I've tried to draw on personal life experience in creating the cards. Um, um, Maria says her perfect card would be Beauty and the Beast from that series from when I was growing up, Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton. Yeah, yeah. So that is an interesting idea, and that kind of is an
remember
image
that
that
now.
for a lot of people.
That series.
Yeah, yeah. I think he was actually one of the better beasts. I liked how he was portrayed. He was actually that merging of the man and lion, like we see in the Lightseers Tarot, which is really pretty. All right. Well, we've talked a great deal about strength. And now it's that time where we look at what our card will be next week. Let's see. Here we go. We are well moving into the second half of.
I always get nervous at this point.
Right? Like, no one gets more nervous than me because I will say the major arcana in particular, when they show up, they always are speaking to current circumstances or what's about to happen in my life. Even though, this has been a random process to do cards, they keep having influence on my life, which is sometimes good, sometimes not so great, right? All right, our card is the King of Swords. I've not actually done any of the kings yet. So this will be our first king that we work on. And it should be interesting to see how that turns out because I have no thoughts about the kings in particular. I have done a couple of knights and I did one knight and I think I've done all 4 pages, though we haven't talked about all 4 pages. And I've done one queen, which I'm not sure I'm happy with. So the courts really are the hardest to me. And they, definitely have to figure out how you want to use them in your deck and read with them before you start creating imagery. Yeah,
Did you do the Emperor yet, Rosemary?
I'm sorry?
Did you do the Emperor yet?
I did. Okay. It was somewhat of a traditional imagery. It was actually a man in a business suit standing in the foreground with a mountain in the background. and he had a cane with a ram's head on it.
Hmm.
It was kind of more of a business world than I like king sitting on a throne kind of thing. It's something I may revisit um, when I look at all of the cards together. And but yeah, so but I guess that does give me a point to jump off of for this card, is what the emperor is like. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and helping
Well,
me
thank
talk
you
about
for inviting me.
string. I'm going to try to demonstrate a little courage today and do something I haven't done in forever. When I started transitioning, I stopped going to the pool here at my HOA. And because I didn't want to wear a men's swimsuit, I didn't want to wear a women's swimsuit, and I have never liked community pools. I've always swam in the river, the ocean, lakes, that kind of thing. But one of my friends is having a birthday party today, so I got on the swimsuit. I'm going to try going swimming today for the first time since I transitioned. And So, yeah, show a little courage. I've had the swimsuit for 4 years and I've never used it because I, I've never had a situation where it's just going to be me and people that I'm close to, right? It's
Yeah.
always been like in a hotel that they've had the opportunity to swim. So I've always chickened out. So anyway, I hope everyone shows a little courage this week and a little benevolent fortitude towards people around them. Until next time, everyone, good journeys.
Bye.